Good evening to you, James.
Tom.
Let's begin with a story we've been touching on in the news, an article that's come out in Le Monde newspaper with revelations about the NSA's espionage and just the extent of it here in France.
That's right. The Le Monde got their hands on a memo, Tom, a US memo dating back to 2010, essentially detailing espionage on French embassies or French diplomatic missions in New York at the UN and also in Washington, D.C., which paved the way basically for a whole load of declarations by François Hollande, by Laurent Fabius, the French foreign minister, about how disgusted they were with these practices. I mean, literally saying that these were unacceptable practices. François Hollande demanding an explanation of Obama on the phone. Laurent Fabius speaking to John Kerry, who was in Paris, and also asking for explanations and using that same expression, unacceptable practices, that François Hollande used. So it once again put the US in a pretty awkward position where they had to say, look, you're an old ally, we like you, this is just, these are legitimate questions, as Barack Obama said on the telephone, about our practices. Legitimate questions are being asked, so they have to sort of eat a certain amount of humble pie. So there you go. Basically, Le Monde is all over this, and they're treating it like it's new news, when in fact, really, I think everybody would have probably suspected that this was happening anyway. I think what's interesting there, Tom, about that Le Monde article is the headline and the language. It is in English, right? And this is the first time Le Monde has actually done this, to my knowledge, putting a translation of one of their articles on the front page. It shows to what extent they are aware that there's interest in this scoop in the US. And so the article was translated. Of course, Der Spiegel and other publications have been doing that for millennia now. But Le Monde is also catching up on that whole, I suppose, doing a little bit of journalism in English sometimes.
Well, I hope they don't change their name to The World, because Le Monde sounds rather better.
It does.
But James, a lot of people saying, amongst them Bernard Kouchner, who was the former foreign minister, that perhaps this is a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
That's right. In fact, Bernard Kouchner has said, look, let's admit, everybody does this. Everybody's listening in on everybody's conversations, allies, enemies, whatever. Actually, the only difference here is that France has fewer means to do it than the US, which is actually creating a degree of jealousy. So I think that is a case of him speaking the truth there and cutting through all of the political guff where everybody's expressing shock despite being well aware that it's common practice. And it reminds me of the coverage that we saw in early July when a lot of this was breaking, Tom. That was in Foreign Policy, Espionnage Moi. And Foreign Policy essentially was poking fun at the French president's outraged reaction, saying, look, there has been corporate espionage by French companies on US companies going back to the 1960s. This is people are well aware of this, so as you said, pot, kettle, etc. And this is the coverage from Foreign Policy this time round. Even spy-crazy France is surprised by America's giant surveillance net. In other words, they're again pointing the finger saying France is also a bit spy-crazy.
Now, a lot of people here saying that, France has acted in terms of a reaction. It's not just been words, just like Brazil and Dilma Rousseff cancelled that visit to the United States. What actions have there been then from France?
All right. Well, I suppose for now, really, not many actions. But I suppose what's interesting, I think, is this is another blow, really, for US soft power. You see Brazilian, that was Dilma Rousseff saying, I'm not coming to the US, I'm cancelling this trip because in the absence of a timely investigation. So I think between these NSA revelations, which are coming back again and again, and all of the fallout over the shutdown of the US government, which meant that Barack Obama had to cancel a trip to Asia, which saw John Kerry taking his place, and in a rather humiliating position for the US, he was featured on the outside of that photo there at the APEC summit in Indonesia, whereas Vladimir Putin and Li Keqiang, the Chinese premier, were featuring very centrally, which caused some, if I can't find the article now, but many people were saying China is stepping into the breach that the US is leaving. So it's another blow for soft power, I guess, where John Kerry's had to eat some humble pie.
All right, there's quite a lot of that being eaten at the moment. Thank you very much indeed, James Creed. And that was MediaWatch. It's time now for Focus. And